Hey everybody, it's Friday afternoon, June 1st. It's the LTR Digital Group's Facebook Live. It's about 2:30 Central Time. And in comes Dale after taking care of some technical, not issues,
I hope it,
just making sure it works.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, we can't, if they ask questions, like, we can't see chat. We got to figure out some way to set that up.
Well, when I look on here, it distracts me and I can't talk intelligently.
Well,
or some would say I can't talk intelligently anyway, so.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah. Anyway, first.
Not with him sitting there.
The first shout out for this week goes out to Dallas James from First Optum Mortgage. He actually views our material and finds a fair amount of value in it. So I'm glad we're helping out a few people.
Welcome, Dallas. Thank you.
So you're the winner this week, and the invoice is on its way.
Watch your mail.
Yeah, watch your inbox. All right. So today there's a couple of topics. I think we should focus on this one. And if we got time, we'll circle back to that one. So the first one, as we've talked about a fair amount on some of our other live streams, we talked about GDPR, which is the privacy new privacy rules that are going into effect in the EU, which was the 25th of May. 25th of May. So we're roughly a week into it, right? There's still some things that are going on with that from the standpoint of compliance in the EU, and it's a moving target, but those rules are in place. Have you heard any pushback or anything? Anything you've read?
Well, yes. There was an email. Well, not an email. There was an article. Interesting. There was an article that came out shortly before it went into effect, stating that the regulators weren't sure who was enforcing what and who's responsible, because each country also is enforced it. So some of the pushback was this rush towards compliance or getting ready for compliance, but the regulators themselves weren't ready to enforce it. So the thing to remember about GDPR, this isn't something that was just hatched this week. This is actually it's probably been a couple of years in the making. And basically the due date was the 25th. The bigger pushback was it has affected some businesses. Companies like the New York Times and large publications that do have EU readerships, some of them are figuring out, okay, they've just gone blank, right? There's like Washington Post and New York Times, you can't even see in some of these EU countries because they said, we don't know what to put into effect, so we're just going to block you out, which is crazy when you think of that from a business model. And then one of the large publications said, oh, okay, well, we've got a solution. We'll make, if you're in the EU and you want to see us, you've got to pay this premium subscription that was like twice the amount of a normal subscription. And if you did that, we'll give you an ad-free experience. The pushback on that was, well, that's not giving clear consent or willing consent. What you're doing is saying, if you don't consent, we're going to penalize you and make you pay for it. So there's some legal challenges to that right now too.
And it's not all about the ads either. It's the collection of cookies and things of that nature for remarketing purposes or just data collection, right? So it's not just providing them with an ad-free experience. Where when you click on the ads, then then other actions happen.
Right. Well, I mean, because when you think of that ad environment, is if I show you an ad, it's with the intention of you taking an action, and chances are there's going to be a cookie involved, or there's going to be some collection or targeting methodology, right? A targeting methodology that I'm going to use is based on some information that exists in the cookie somewhere. So yeah, I mean, it all kind of just feeds into one another.
Yeah. So we've talked about it in the past about what may happen here in the U.S. And so it's happening. So that's what this article is about, and that's kind of what the topic is. So the title of this article says, "Do not sell my personal information. California eyes data privacy measures." Okay, so I'll kind of introduce it a little bit, and then you kind of pontificate on it. That's a big word for me.
Yeah, that's a good one.
For a kid from Wisconsin, pontificate's a big word. So there's a gentleman called and I'll probably butcher his name, Alistair McTaggart, a San Francisco real estate developer that is somewhat leading an advocacy group in California with the intention and the effort behind it is to get a an amendment on the ballot in November to change the, I don't know if it changes the Constitution or if it actually helps to put something into law as the right of the people that will restrict companies from collecting data, right? And the reason he kind of started this was because he was hobnobbing with some higher ups within Silicon Valley and namely Google. And that person from Google said to him on the side, "You'd be surprised at how much data Google has on you." All right, so that kind of put up his radar, right? And so he got together with some of his friends and family, you know, in the area, and they created this advocacy group. So why don't you kind of take it from there, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, you really encapsulated it. When I think of the California, this is kind of where we got to remember California. I mean, call them whack nuts or crazy, whatever. But that's where like the Ralph Naders came out of, and a lot of these consumer rules came out of kind of that cutting edge, or I shouldn't call it cutting edge, but they spearheaded a lot of things in California. And the frankness and the reality of is here in this part of the country, I think everybody accepts is, you know, so goes New York and California, as does the rest of the country, unless you're a holdout state like the Alabamas of the world. And if you're in Alabama, there's nothing. I lived in Alabama. It's a fine state. But, you know, I think that comes from, you know, politicians and legislators not feeling that they're sitting idly by while things are happening in other states. There's that need to, okay, we need to take action. And as you and I were talking beforehand, ill-informed action is not necessarily good action.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think that's the situation that we're in right now. To me, the bigger point of that, which, you know, Pat gave you a great rundown of that, is it is, number one, it is starting a dialogue around data privacy and data rights, the rights that you and I have to our own personal data and who uses our personal data. And by now, this is becoming kind of an old story. We've heard this many, many times by now. But when I think of this from the agency perspective, whether or not legislation comes out of this that makes sense, what we're seeing on the opposite side of that as a reaction is an increasing use of ad blockers. And while that is an extreme action by people, and granted, ad blockers are used more by maybe tech savvy or younger people, but now Chrome is building it into their browsers, Firefox is building it into their browsers. And when we look at how the internet works, whether you're a content creator, whether you're a brand that's trying to advertise, really that ecosystem is run by advertising and content creators being able to monetize their content through advertising. So simply throwing up an ad blocker, while it might improve your experience because you're not seeing the ads, over the long term, it degrades the internet because now those content creators, maybe there's a content creator that you like going to their blog or wherever it goes, but they're unable to monetize their content. So that's not a sustainable model. So we're kind of going in this, we're being tugged in all these different directions. There's no doubt if you were awake last week, chances are your inbox was full of emails of everybody, privacy policy update, this, that, everybody's taking action or doing something. How many of those you actually opened up and read? I know I didn't. So, I mean, that's just a stark reality of it, but everybody was needing to do something, and so now we're coming up with the legislation. I don't know how that's going to affect the Googles and the Facebooks of the world and the big players. Even if something were to come out of that, you know that there's plenty of lobbying that they can do to fight this as well.
And that's what they suggested in the article too. It's yet to be seen what the Facebooks and the Googles are gonna do.
At the same time, there's kind of things blowing in the wind that, you know, Google and Facebook are up to some things too. I'm not going to get into the whole blockchain and things like that, but You know, they're looking at maybe launching some things and changing the way advertising is done even within their ecosystems.
Well, a couple of things to spin off of what you said, because I use an ad blocker on my Chrome browser, and there are some sites that won't load the content because it detects that I've got an ad blocker. So for that site, I have to pause it for that site, which is kind of the road you were going down, which is, you know, it's the ecosystem. The internet is paid a lot via, you know, targeting certain people with the right ads at the right time, and that's a lot of what we do, right?
Yeah.
So we're in an interesting time with all that type of stuff. So
yeah, and now I'm reading about things trying to be programmed, or, you know, code being put into sites to detect ad blockers, to fight, to be an anti-script to the block. I mean, it's becoming somewhat messy. Fortunately, though, that there's still plenty of opportunities to do good advertising, good marketing, getting out in front of your audience. But at the same time, I mean, it's if there's somebody that is so adamantly opposed to seeing ads, was that somebody that probably necessarily would have been good to target or show your ads to anyway?
You know, and in today's world, I personally I don't think the ads are intrusive. I remember years ago when pop-ups were the biggest thing, and it was such a pain. You couldn't read any content because you were constantly getting bombarded with pop-ups.
Yep.
You know, you go to any type of site now where you want to get some news. You know, it's just the ads are there, but, you know, to a great extent, I've got ad blindness for that. But
yeah,
you know, so I don't know. I don't understand that portion of it, to be honest.
Yeah, and there's different layers of ad. I mean, there's that native advertising that happens within content, and there's third-party ads, and there's this all, you know, because also, if you remember, depending on how you use the internet, if you're downloading a lot of, say, like extensions or apps or what have you, those things are collecting data too, and sometimes you can be targeted and see ads as a result of not necessarily just the website that you go to, but the other things that you've done online, especially on mobile too. So yeah, I mean, we'll do our best. I know we look at some things to say, you know, what can businesses do to be compliant, or to prepare their website, or whatever. I mean, again, we can't speak from a position of legal counsel or telling you legally what to do, but technically there's solutions rolling out. There's things that are happening that can be, especially if you're using I think I've seen them on WordPress, and I think I've seen them on a few other the major CMSs where some solutions are coming out.
I want to circle back to one thing with the California law, because, you know, you set up it in a different way, and it's kind of, it seems like it's a knee-jerk reaction right away. So one state feels they want to be the leader in this, and an advocacy group is pushing for some type of law or legislation or something without truly understanding the ramifications of everything involved around it. So if you're into digital as far as the direction it's going to go. You know, let's just kind of watch what's going on in California, because personally, I don't want to follow California's lead in anything, but it could be interesting the impact that this effort has. You know, and like we talked before, you know, it'll be interesting to watch the politicians coming up. You know, with the 2018 elections, the midterm elections, and it'll be interesting to see which candidates kind of hop on that bandwagon.
Well, when we think of technology too, in the various platforms, if there's a state that this is going to be fought out in, it's going to be California, because that's where all these companies operate.
Where they operate, it's the fifth largest economy in the
globally.
World. Yeah, in the
globally.
World.
Yeah. I would say just stay tuned to our live streams, and anytime there's information coming out, we'll try and update you. To the extent that it's relevant or important.
And as always, if you have questions, you know, reach out to us on Facebook, reach out to us via our email. pdevine@ltrdigital.com. Our phone number, 952-943-3997. That comes to me because you want to talk to me first.
Right, right. Yeah, and we didn't say, I hope you all had a good Memorial Day weekend. Yeah. It's a short weekend. Yeah. I mean, a short week.
Short week. So, all right. Anything else?
No, I think that would be. I mean, there's always plenty to talk about, but no. And I appreciate Dallas reaching out and saying that you enjoy the content. If there's content that you'd be interested in hearing more about, or some area of marketing that you'd like to hear more about, let us know. So, because we just kind of throw this together day of and say, hey, let's talk about
this. We put a little more effort into that than that. You know, we picked the end of the week because multiple things come up during the course of the week. So the way it kind of worked today was Dale threw me 4 different topics of spicy news topics, and I picked one. So then we talk about it a little bit, make sure we're on the same page and understanding, and present it up to all of you. So,
yeah, that's the way we do it. That's the way we roll.
Okay. It's got to be 5 o'clock somewhere. Time for happy hour. Peace out.